So I quickly sat her down and I just told her, give me quickly the Reader's Digest version. What happened? What is it that I can help you with? And she told me her baby was murdered. And for my mind straight away was, okay, I'm a trained psychotherapist. Should I do psychotherapy? Should I do the traditional trauma work? What do I do? And I said, no, let's do MEMI because I know the science behind MEMI, how effective it is, and got her to be secure, safe, anchored in a room. And we did a MEMI. And within 30 minutes, literally she became a different person. And her words to me was, a huge cloud has been lifted from my mind. I can grieve now.
Mike and Joachim, welcome to the Science of Psychotherapy podcast. It's so great to see you both.
Well, thank you very much, Matthew and Richard. It's nice to meet you as well. Delighted to be here.
Yeah, and Joachim, you're in here from Singapore. So, we know each other a little bit, so it's great to see you again.
Great to see you again, Richard. And thank you, Matthew, for having us.
It's a great pleasure. We at the Science of Psychotherapy, we wrote a fairly detailed article to say it's not science about the reduction of things and the mechanizing of things. It's science which is the knowledge of. So we really want to talk to everywhere that we can, and we've actually loved to bring in cross-cultural and different cultural works. And we're doing 2 for 1 here, which is fantastic. But Mike, you're really Joachim, I know you're a student and now a trainer, but this fabulous process, the Multichannel Eye Movement Integration. You've been developing this and got some great material about it, training and books. But I think a lot of people, it might be something new in some of our audience. So I'd love you just to give us a bit of a background, where it came from, what drew you into this, because I know there's quite a story behind all this.
There is quite a story, but I'll give you the short version.
Thank you very much.
So I was a university administrator for half of my life. And when I left that, after I had a tumble in the trauma barrel myself, came out of it on the other end and changed careers. So I went back to school, got a master's in counseling, and started a private practice specializing in trauma. And I was drawn immediately to a training center that was near where I lived in the DC area, Washington, DC, run by Ron Klein. And he was an NLP trainer of some renown, I would think. And I took all my training in NLP from him, and that kind of guided my career towards a different kind of therapy than I had learned in school. One of the things that I learned in 2002 from Ron was eye movement integration. And that's specifically an eye movement technique that was developed by Steve and Connie Ray Andreas shortly after Shapiro introduced EMDR. And it was kind of like almost like a backlash to EMDR, because there was controversy at the time about whether EMDR was NLP based or not. Francine Shapiro actually took some training in NLP and knew about the structure of experience model and all of that. So I took the EMI training and started using it myself, and I was just amazed by how successful and fast and durable it was in terms of client outcomes. The only problem with that was there was no written documentation for EMI. The Andreas's, Steve did a shocking video at the Ericksonian conference, I think. And you can still get that video from their operation, Real People Press, I think it's called, .com. And they produced, Steve and Connie Ray and Andreas produced a 3-page paper, and that was it, with procedures about how to do EMI. When I started using it, and then I started training some folks in it, and I eventually got EMI certification through Ron Klein's operation. and that was in 2008. So at that time, the people that I was training were telling me, they were reluctant to use it because it didn't have written procedures. And secondly, they couldn't understand it because there was so much NLP involved in EMI. They'd have to go and get NLP courses before they could take EMI. So what I started to do and have done since 2008 is to embellish EMI into something bigger than it originally was. So I developed a protocol, developed a theoretical model for it, using NLP's structure of experience model as the basis. And then develop procedures and assessments and things that therapists are very comfortable with, but NLP doesn't necessarily provide. So that culminated last year in 2021 in the publication of the book, Multichannel Eye Movement Integration. And since that time, I've been promoting it primarily through my website and as a trainer at the Arizona Trauma Institute. That's just north of where I am in Tucson. We've done 2 or 3 live trainings now, and it's also been videotaped and made into an on-demand webinar. So multi-channel eye movement integration, or what I call MEMI, is a soup to nuts approach to PTSD and trauma. And it's written specifically with PTSD in mind, but it's applicable to a variety of other problems like phobias and just places where people are stuck, what some people would call little t trauma. Now that I have established a relationship with Joachim in Singapore, Joachim has become a good friend. He contacted me after finding his way to my website one day, and we struck up a conversation, and he eventually took the live training with me for a practitioner level, and then was very anxious to become a trainer himself. So we worked together individually, and now he's a licensed trainer specifically for the South Asia region of the world, and he's going great guns with that. So I want to introduce him.
Yes, it's fabulous to see you again. I mean, Joachim, everyone calls you whatever we want. You came out to Australia, did my mirroring hands training. Yes. So this idea of getting responses and activities is something from people from procedures and practices, something you're well used to, and you do quite a lot of work. Your efforts in Singapore are extensive. I see you sponsoring trainings and also attending a lot of conferences of things. What is the going on in Singapore at the moment, both with MEMI and also with your broader therapeutic work?
Oh, thank you, Richard. Well, in Singapore, one of the things that we've been discovering a lot is many people are going through a lot of traumas, big T's, small T's, and the modality in Singapore has been people hungry for outcomes, and it's like effective, cheap, not so costly outcomes. So when I learned MEMI, and also mind-boggling, it's like, wow, it's so simple and so effective. So when I did the research on eye movement, I found there's so much evidence for effectiveness. So that's when I decided to tell I would like to be a trainer. I'd like to spread MEMI in South Asia. So in Singapore, I've been doing it, many trainings. And if I don't mind sharing one story that actually convinced me completely about MEMI. After doing Mike's training, I was enthusiastic to use it. That's me, right? I like to have applications. And just at that moment, I had a call from a minister. Said, I have this woman who's flying from the US, and she has a trauma. Can you see her? I said, sure. I mean, trauma my naive mind. So she came, and when she came after clearing all the quarantine from COVID, she saw me, and her features, she was literally what we call was a state of fight, freeze, the activation of limbic system. So I quickly sat her down And I just told her, give me quickly the Reader's Digest version. What happened? What is it that I can help you with? And she told me her baby was murdered. And for my mind straight away was, okay, I'm a trained psychotherapist. Should I do psychotherapy? Should I do the traditional trauma work? What do I do? Then I said, no, let's do MEMI, because I know the science behind MEMI, how effective it is, and got her to be secure, safe, anchored in a room. And we did a MEMI. And within 30 minutes, literally she became a different person. And her words to me was, a huge cloud has been lifted from my mind. I can grieve now. And we took just another 2 sessions to work through the grief, and she's doing well. And ever since that experience, I've told Mike, I'm going to do a lot of trainings in MEMI, train everyone I can, and to share how easy to learn and how effective. And it does not need to be costly. So I've gone to Singapore, do trainings. I've done it in Malaysia, and I hope to one day do it in Australia too.
Yeah, so this might be a good place now just to touch on maybe some of the theoretical aspects, and then how does that play out practically, as in what do you actually do?
So unlike the other eye movement therapies, there's a very specific model for MEMI. It's called the structure of experience model. And basically, there are 4 elements. Every human experience is made up of 4 elements. Now, this is an adaptation of the NLP model. So there are 4 elements that make up every experience. One is thoughts or cognitions. One is feelings, kinesthetic feelings, visceral feelings, emotional feelings. One is context, the who, what, when, and where. And one is sensory information, which is primarily visual information, imagery that we have related to an experience. Practically speaking, what we do is we define those, we break them down, and we modify them using what are called submodalities in NLP. We just call them modifiers in MEMI. So if I'm asking someone, if I invite someone in, and they sit down, and I first say to them, you don't have to tell me the details of your trauma. So you can tell me if you absolutely must, but we can go all the way through. And I have a video that I use when I train where I never asked or found out what happened to this woman all the way through. But what you do is you say, okay, 4 elements. What are your thoughts about that experience? In MEMI, we don't assume that thoughts are irrational and they need to be changed to rational thoughts. We take them for what they are. They're very often irrational. So someone might say, I'm weak in relation to the experience. Just write it down. That's all we do. Then we ask, now there is an image related to that experience. We don't ask, is there an image? We say, there is an image. Tell me about the image. Is it in color or black and white? And those are the submodalities. Is it near or far away? Is it clear or fuzzy? Is it a movie or is it a still photo? And we write that down. This is the pretest. What visceral feelings do you have related to that experience? Well, I've got a knot in my neck. Write that down. And when we write that down, we also test the intensity of it. So we have a little scale we call the intensity scale, that's from 0, no intensity at all, to 4, which is the highest intensity. So when I have that visceral feeling in my neck, it's a 4. And that becomes the baseline for that visceral feeling. Emotional feelings, what emotions do you attach to that? Horror. Okay, horror. And is that a 4 or is that a 3? What score is that? It's a 4. And that composes the baseline, the pretest for the 4 elements in the structure of experience. And then we go to the eye movements. Now, there are some safety mechanisms involved. We use a technique called therapeutic dissociation, similar to what was called visual kinesthetic dissociation in NLP, right? But Ron Klein, my teacher, really popularized therapeutic dissociation, where you have the client in front of you and you tell them to project an image of that experience all the way over there, modulation in my voice, all the way over there on the wall. You're here in the present. I use gestures. You're here in the present. That experience is in the past. And the other safety mechanism is anchoring a resource state. So we ask the person, if that emotional word that you attached to the experience was horror, give me an opposite word to horror. And she might say, competent or peaceful. And we revivify an old experience. All right, I want you to think about a time when you were completely peaceful and tell me about it. And we use the modifiers again during that time. So what is the visual image? Is it in color when you were peaceful, you were in the backyard, you were smelling the grass, you had your feet in the grass and they were tickling your feet? And we revivify it or bring it back to life using hypnotic language. Okay, I want you to drift back in time. I want you to settle into that experience. And I want you to be there completely. I want you to see everything you saw then. I want you to feel everything you felt then, feel the grass in your feet, and take it to the top. Feel that in every part of you, every muscle, every neuron, every cell. Take it all the way to the top. That's right. Peaceful, peaceful, peaceful. And by repeating the word, we're anchoring that particular experience as a reciprocal inhibition to the traumatic experience. And then I test it. We take a little break. I say, what did you have for breakfast this morning? Oh, okay, blueberries. I love blueberries. If I say the word peaceful, what happens? And you want the person to say, oh, I can feel those feelings from being back there. So you anchor that resource before you begin the eye movements, and you establish therapeutic dissociation, and then you do the eye movements. And after the first set of eye movements, you retest. Okay, look out there at that experience now and tell me, is it the same or different? I won't coach you. Is it just tell me, same or different? Well, it's different. How is it different? And I don't say how it might be different. She might say, the image is farther away. Ah, farther away. Is that better or worse? Well, it's better. Oh, that's great. What score would you give it now? Because the intensity of that image was a 4 when we started out. And now you say it's better. What score would you give it now? So and there are only 4 eye movement sets in MEMI. It goes very fast. It's not like other eye movement therapies where you're going at it for 15, 16, 17 sets. I think Joachim would probably agree that it's often, you're done after 2 or 3 sets. And you don't have to.
Is there anything else happening apart from the eye movement? So you're not repeating words or you're not imagining something? Is it just the eye movement?
I'm glad you asked that, Matt, because yes, there is another element. And this is what puts MEMI apart from the other eye movement therapies. So we use metaphors, we use embedded commands, we use visual, spatial, and temporal reframes while we're doing the eye movements. So I might be doing an eye movement where I say, okay, and now we're going to do a big circle right here in the center, encompassing everything. A metaphor. And it's getting smaller and smaller and smaller, shrinking it down to the size of a pea. And you may find that your thoughts about this will change. Okay, so, and there are some prescribed in the protocol, but practitioners are free to make up their own, of course. So yes, there's a There is a second, it's almost like it's a 5D model. I mean, there's the visual, there's the eye movement, there's the split awareness between the experience and the present. There's the anchoring of a resource to keep them comfortable. And there's also the linguistic input about the metaphors and the commands.
Well, I mean, and this is, of course, is terrific idea. I mean, we talk a lot about the nature of looking at things as a complex system. There's a lot of things going on, and you don't know which part of the bear you can poke. So just poking around and allowing the client to find the response and to find the interaction. And one thing interesting, Mike, you might appreciate. I'm a great exponent of the fact that so many of the therapies already came from us. I mean, even Francine Shapiro, she found that it was looking into the water and finding her eyes moving. And I was doing a mirroring hands just group experience in Portugal, and I looked to one of the participants at the back, and his eyes were moving in the back and forward motion under his eyelids. He'd closed his eyes, but they were moving. And I spoke to him afterwards and I said, what was going on? He said, well, I was thinking about a trauma that I'd had. And I said, and how do you feel about it now? And he said, I'm not worried about it now. So it was a very simple experience because it was just a group sort of generalized thing. But that spontaneous, natural engagement with this process of eye movement that seems to be able to either interfere with the blocks or open up the connections. We don't know exactly, do we?
No, we don't. And there is some recent research, but where they've come so far is to say that eye movements are definitely changing the limbic system some way. That's as much as they can say right now, as far as I've read anyway. And the other thing about this is that, MEMI is, I consider it organic and limbic and not cognitive or behavioral. It's not cognitive because the cognitions change automatically after the sensory and the kinesthetic reactions have diminished. So somebody who says, I'm weak in the beginning, and this is an actual client, at the end said, it's just an unfortunate thing that happened.
Yeah, so those cognitive changes are cascading elements that emerge as after the process. And I always wonder the proximity of the orbital frontal cortex, which is to do with errors and messes, and the direct, the very close connection of the limbic, particularly the amygdala, to that orbital and early prefrontal cortex. There's a lot of interesting neurobiology, and over the time we might figure it out a bit better.
I can't help but think, there is a memory reconsolidation process happening here with the eye movement being the juxtaposition between, the old frame and a new frame that you're bringing in. So, and again, we're not really, we understand the mechanism of memory reconsolidation, but exactly how the eye movement is interrupting that and the other points that you're asking the client to focus on. It's not just straight bilateral stimulation or eye movement. There's a little bit more to it. It's a bit more complex, and maybe that has to do with the speed of the therapy. I'm not sure. Mike, do you have any ideas about that?
I do. So the other eye movement therapies basically use bilateral movements. Sometimes they use a diagonal bilateral, but it's basically horizontal, about at eye level. In MEMI, we use the whole visual field. And it's not based on the eye accessing position model of NLP,
right?
Because that's very controversial. However, I do use the whole visual field because I believe that eye movements to different areas do indicate different neural processing based on the modalities being activated in the brain. That's my belief.
So brain spotting sort of has a little bit of that as well.
Well, brain spotting looks for a tick, if you will, in the visual.
A particular spot,
right?
yeah.
And when it finds a tick, that is believed to be a direct connection into a neurological mishap of some kind, right?
Yeah.
This is not that at all.
Okay.
This is, my experience is that generally speaking, right-handed people, when they are recalling visual information, their eyes go up to their left, generally speaking. When they're constructing visual information, their eyes go up to the right. Auditory out to the right for constructing, and auditory past, if you will, or experienced to the left. There's actually a doctoral study by Michael Buckner way back in '87 that confirmed those accessing positions. There are two other accessing positions in the model, which are kinesthetic and internal narrative, but they were never confirmed. And tests of that model just kind of stopped because it got so much criticism. But we do have this one study that confirms those, and we have a lot of clinical experience that says that that's true. Because I can often sit with somebody and see their eyes go up to the left and ask them, what did they just do? Did they get a picture of what? And they'll tell me, right?
Yeah.
It's not perfect, but my take on this whole model thing is that eye movements are organized and systematic. They're purposeful. They're connected to a larger neurological system of some kind. And not to take advantage of that is a mistake. So when you're looking for a tick, or you're just doing bilateral movements, you're not taking advantage of the whole organized system. And by doing the eye movements that we have, go to all the corners. There are some basic ones that just are like the EMDR basic eye movement. There are some triangles. There's the circle that I showed you. But the circle, and then there's a figure 8, are designed to accommodate some of the strategic comments that you make, some of the metaphors and the commands and all of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite obvious. I mean, and we want to make it. We're giving a wonderful sort of broad description, but this is something you need to train in. You need to explore, and you have those wonderful trainings on your program. We'll have sort of connections to that on the and links to that, which is terrific. But I just want to bring Joachim in here a little bit in the sense that now when you're in Singapore, you're working in several languages potentially.
Yes.
I mean, certainly English. I know it's very broad there, but you've got Singaporean, you've got Malaysian. How
Yes.
I imagine this has got some kind of benefit when you're working with people. Is it without language, or certainly there are things? What are the way you're experiencing it there in this multi-language sort of place?
Yeah. So that's a beautiful part of it, Richard. Thank you for asking this question. So in Singapore and Malaysia, it's multilingual. There's English, there's Mandarin, there's Malay, there's Tamil, and then the other languages. And one of the universal attribute, I would say, strength of MEMI is that I've used it in English, in Mandarin, in Malay, and with basic articulation. Ikut arahan saya, ikut jari saya, ikut mata. That's in Malay, and it just follow, and just the goal-directed movement of the eyes in the specific peripheral vision of the person brings that change for them. It's like it's minimal language required, and yet because they want to go, they want to change, they do a divided consciousness, the therapeutic dissociation, and they follow it. The outcomes just happens. I mean, that's a beautiful part. It's just organically evolves. Recently I did this with this lady in Indonesia, and it was via Zoom. So imagine in Zoom, via Zoom, and she's in Indonesia, I'm in Singapore, and because she can't speak English, I was doing in my Malay, she was understand from her Indonesian Malay. So there's a slight difference in the language. Guess what? Within 30 minutes, because first of the pre-talk, everything, 30 minutes, all it took to literally bring down completely her anxiety or trauma that I'm going to be found out. Because what happened, the story was that her ex-boyfriend has pictures of her in compromising positions. And in Islamic countries, I'm gone. And from that trauma to, it's over. It's like, he can do what he wants. I'm not scared. And all he did was just go direct movements, accessing it, and minimal language.
Yeah, we often say that providing the opportunity and the appropriate circumstances is what the body needs, just needs sometimes.
Correct.
And there are there's so few opportunities and so many distracting and disrupting and disturbing circumstances that we live in. It is amazing what can be done in very short periods of time. I mean, certainly in psychotherapy, our good friend Michael Hoyt and Flavio Canistra talk about brief therapy and talk about the effectiveness of a single therapy. And actually in this month's magazine, we've got an example of 3 therapeutic emergences over a single therapy that proved to be all the client required. And it's this, and I like, Mike, the fact that there's this persistent feedback and reframing and reappraisal of the way, you know, how does it feel? But without any judgment, without any sort of sense of, you know, you don't even have to hide any sort of judgment, like, oh, it's gone further away. Oh, no, that's fine. It really is just allowing the client to vary their experience in their own way.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah. Now, Mike, you've done a Master of Counseling. You were taught all of the traditional talk therapy things, you know, that we're all taught. Are you seeing these more somatic kind of techniques now starting to filter through, you know, our education system? So are we seeing therapists sort of coming out more better equipped to do what you're doing?
I wish I could say yes to that, but I don't think it's caught on yet. Really. I would often come in and do a lecture at a university, but the lecture would be termed as alternative therapy, and that is something mainstream. Yeah, we're still looking at an evidence-based model that gets in the way of, you know, doing some of these cutting-edge therapies that are out there and effective. I once gave a demonstration, I won't say where, but I gave a demonstration with a volunteer from the audience who had a car accident. She was a nurse and desensitized her trauma from that in a very short time. And I was in the afternoon after lunch, I was sitting there just relaxing for a minute, and 2 people came into the room and they were talking about my presentation. And one of them said, you know, I was really amazed at, you know, what he was able to do in a short time. And the other person said, yeah, but CBT for me, you know, CBT for me. So there's, you know, there's inroads, but I don't think we're there yet. But I think that the traditional models are really being tested now, because there are therapies that are showing faster and more effective ways of resolving trauma.
And it's just a matter of working through and understanding it more, and by not experiencing and not expressing and not doing things, we don't learn anything. I always used to find it amusing that Ernie Rossi, when working with Milton Erickson, and they would review things. Ernie was my mentor, so you know, we got to know him very well. And but he would review and write meticulous notes about an Erickson session, and then they would sit down, they would discuss it, and Ernie would sit there and say, "Oh, and I can see here you were using such and such, and there you shifted to that, and then you made this, and then you did this, and I could see, and then you spent that, and then there was this," and he'd get to the end of his detailed explanation that he spent several weeks working on, and Erickson would just turn to him and say, "Yes, I did." And Rossi said after a while he realized that at the time Erickson was not cognitively implementing any of these processes. So I could imagine when you're talking about you teach them about the movements and the circles and the squares, and that, as you're saying, that, and even some that they might find themselves inventing, and that is something that emerges in a responsive sort of interaction with the client. So it's not a rigid pattern. I just want to quickly make sure no one thinks that. So how variable does it feel for you as a practitioner, Mike? And then perhaps what you might have to say, Joachim.
Yeah. So one of the things I did was to establish some standard eye movements. And the reason for them is to be able to evaluate what we're doing. Because when EMI was developed, basically you were told to just make sure that you connect all of the accessing positions in the eye movement model, one to each other during a session. No guidance was given. So I spent about 4 or 5 years experimenting with eye movements and trying to come up with the ones that I thought would be most effective based on their ability to address what I think are the 3 most virulent aspects of trauma: the visual imagery, the emotional feelings, and the visceral feelings. If you target those and you resolve those, everything else is going to fall into place. So the eye movements that I designed kind of tailored to that kind of thinking. However, you can use any eye movements and it will be somewhat effective. It won't be as effective if you don't use this organized approach, which is multisensory and multi-channel. How about you, Joachim?
Yeah, what's your experiences, Joachim?
Well, I can say that it's changed my whole approach to therapy, Richard. I mean, yes, you know, I love to learn a lot of science behind different therapies and what works. And ever since I learned MEMI, guess what? I've been incorporating almost all my session has an aspect of MEMI, because I find that just using a goal-directed, that's a key of our MEMI, is goal-directed in terms of assessing all the different channels of how someone processes information and how they feel. But being goal-directed in the movements, automatically I see a shift in the whole physiology, a shift in the cognition, and automatically I'll see without almost 100% times a relief that you go through. And even one guy was telling me that I don't know why, but I feel very emotional, but it's good emotions. It's okay, just allow your brain to reorganize. And we know that by doing that, the brain reorganizes information. It calms the amygdala, deactivates the amygdala. It brings back the prefrontal cortex into function. And that's when hippocampus can reorganize the information in a more holistic way. And I find that inevitably I can't but use MEMI in all my sessions now. Together, mirroring hands, that's again an entry point. Mirroring hands, and then through MEMI. It works brilliantly.
Well, if it brings the results, you know, why would you do anything else if you've got something that's very effective?
Yes.
And I would imagine that the more clients that are exposed to this and have fast and positive and long-lasting results, you know, people talk, and then more and more people will be demanding the same.
It's a simple procedure. It is not complicated. You got 4 elements, and you've got ways of measuring them, and that's all you need to learn to use this, as opposed to a complex theory about, you know, what's happening and all of that. So it's much simpler than what's out there right now.
Right. I like simple.
You,
and I want to add one more thing. Be open and be curious, because if you're locked into this is the only way to work with someone, I think we have lost the plot. But once we're open and curious in what works and how we can help someone to really overcome a trauma, for example, guess what? The amount of good we can do in the world. And that's my one extra piece I would like to add inside.
Beautiful. I think that's fabulous, and knowing Steve and Connie, who continues on his work, they would be, I think, very pleased with all this process and progress, and that the continual development is something that is so important. And the more we do things, the more we're able to investigate them. And you never know, someone might come and produce that fabulous fistful of dollars so that the serious research can be done. But first of all, if we find something that is functional and effective and has value for clients, then we need to pursue it. And we're mad not to. So thank you, Mike, for writing this book, for taking the time to extend it into the to the thoughtful areas and to the potentials and possibilities, so that people get a grasp. And that sort of work is just something you can't pay for. That just takes dedication, and we thank you very much. But for now, I think we will bid you a fond adieu and welcome everybody to look at the show notes, check out the material, check out the links, go in and have a look. Go and have a look at what Joachim's doing in Singapore. It is a wonderful thing to see.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you.
Man. Here, Richard.